This is the video that will keep me single for the rest of the year.
So, feminism is the advocacy of women's rights on the grounds of political, social, and economic equality to men.
By that definition, sounds pretty fucking cool. But feminism has evolved in a certain way where on the good, normal side of it, it's trying to push femininity on males. And on the far, far side of it, we got feminazis who both sides agree are fucking crazy.
Feminazis are just a word that I just don't like to use.
So how about radical feminists?
Yeah, radical feminists.
You rather use that?
Yeah.
'Cause I know, like, the people that would support my view on feminism usually tend to use feminazi, but for the purposes of this...
Yeah.
Radical.
Radical feminists is not something that I agree with because they take it to the extreme where it's just not reasonable. And I actually...
they take it to the point where it's not about equality, it's about, like, superiority and man-hating and vengeance almost. Yeah. And that's not
so, and I'll give you an example. In my government class, there was a kid talking about how in his word, a feminist got mad at him because he held the door open for her. And they started kind of going against feminism and saying, like, oh, this is what they think. But I spoke out and I said, well, if she got mad about that just for the fact that you held a door open for her, then she's not really for feminism. Because even though it could be seen as a chivalrous act, and even though chivalry isn't in itself bad, it could be widely and wrongly interpreted as you can't hold the door open for yourself. But I think that there needs to be a clear distinction between doing something, like I said before, doing something for someone else just for the sake of being nice, whereas some people take it as you're doing this because you think I'm weak. But so I spoke out against that, saying that, you know, if she was really upset about that just for the sake that, you know, he was just holding a door open for her, not with any other, like, pretense to it, just that he was opening a door for her, then that's not really what feminism is about, because it's about equality.
Yeah, but here's my main issue is that, yes, like, at least with your group of feminists, the group you would associate with, it would be about that. But what has happened is you look at college campuses and now you have safe spaces and you have a lot of other measures taken by feminists, whether they're mostly I would describe them as radical, and maybe you might describe them as radical too. The thing is, like, great, like, your movement has some merit to it, but your movement has no voice, whereas, like, the radical ones tend to have a voice and they're leveraging power, and that's what's scaring me. Well, that's what's scaring the shit out of me.
Well, to be fair, the radicals of every group are always the loudest. In general, just across the board, the radicals are always the loudest, and they're the ones that get heard.
Yeah, so but the Ku Klux Klan doesn't fucking basically...
The Ku Klux Klan is radicals. It's a group of radicals.
Yeah, but the thing is, the Ku Klux Klan doesn't, like, influence college campuses to the point where, like, it's nationwide. Like, of course, they go in there and do some crazy fucking shit, and they should be severely prosecuted, but the cases are rare in college campuses at the very least, and when they do, it's pretty isolated, and they're not doing it in the name of, like, other groups. They're usually doing it in their own thing.
In the name of white supremacy.
In the name of white supremacy, right? But, like, with feminism, you have your group, which has merit to it, and then you have the radical feminists. And to me, it's like, if I call out the radical feminist and be like, look, this is what you're doing, and it's not right, and I say, like, well, this is what doesn't have merit, or even if I'm talking to you and I say, well, maybe I don't necessarily agree on one point with feminism, now it looks like I'm a sexist pig and no one's going to ever date me and I'm going to be single for the rest of my life and die alone with cats. That's a huge...
It's okay. People like... Girls like a guy in a uniform. I think you'll be okay if you just... don't talk.
And grow my hair out again.
Yeah.
If I get my hair back. No, but my main issue here is that, again, these, like, I don't even want to call them feminists, but, like, they go out
radicals.
there. These radicals go out there and they silence people's speech, and they make it also so that when I call it out, then I'm isolated by other feminists because I'm calling it out from that side and saying that's totally wrong and, like, you can't just say that. And then normal feminists are attacking me for attacking feminism. And that, to me, that's scary when we should be first addressing that problem. And I think if feminism wants to really make way, they have to address that threat first and deal with their own internal problems and then go with the external.
Well, in any group, you're going to have radicals, like I said before.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to, like, take all of the radicals of a group and try and control them because that's not really how it works. Mm-hmm. What we try and do is to just work past them. And even though our voices might not be as loud as theirs, we still try and approach things in a very calm manner where we try and explain ourselves because, to be completely honest, when you first start out a conversation with, hello, I'm a feminist, their first reaction is just like, what? What did you just say? And so you have to be like, calm down, it's like,
please. Hi, I'm a vegan.
Yeah. It would be
and I'm a lifeguard.
But you have to just say, like, yes, I'm a feminist, but let me just explain all of the things that are actually true about feminism and just point out the things that we're actually trying to accomplish, which is equality for the sexes, and not, like, trying to become the dominant sex, which shouldn't be the goal for any sex. I don't think
it's not.
Because
they shouldn't be dominant. They're both equal. But when you look at feminism, like, yes, they have great intent, but they have a lot of misunderstandings too. Like, of course, there's a huge argument about we had the argument about the glass ceiling last week, and of course, it's a very big feminist issue that, of course, I will argue every time. Another thing that's very arguable is, the wage gap. And that also is a huge topic, and, like, of course, it's a myth to me. I know it's a myth. Studies have shown that, and we can argue that in a separate episode.
We already have.
No, we argued the glass ceiling,
which then turned into wage gaps.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I concede. I concede that point. That either way, what really sucks about feminism, or about what the radical feminists have done to your movement.
Yeah, edit that.
No, I'm like, what the radical feminists have done to your movement, it makes it ridiculously sensitive. We're, like, to the point as, like, one, we have radical feminists that came out and they'll silence your speech and there's no humor left and now no side can bond. And then you get the response of Mennonists have a pretty good point on some things, right? But again, you've compared them to, like, All Lives Matter as Black Lives Matter, right? So that was your comparison. Like, Mennonists are to feminism what All Lives Matter was to Black Lives Matter. I know that's your comparison, but what I'm saying is, like, they do bring up some points, and, like, some feminists, like, you might share that point, but it might not be as strongly expressed by you. My point is, though, is because of what radical feminists have done to your movement, it's evolved feminism to the point where it's almost entirely humorless, it's very overly sensitive, and it's very angry. And with all those things combined, like, the effect on college campuses, the effect on politics is just dramatically deteriorating. And that's what I really, 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 really don't like about feminism. And the last real thing I really hate is how some feminists really try to promote femininity within men. And I'm like, men have to be left to be masculine. And I'm like, if that's like their desire. Some things women just don't understand about men in the same way that some things men won't understand about women.
What I want to say about what you said before about, like, safe spaces.
Yeah.
From what I've seen, safe spaces were originally created so that, like, people could say, like, maybe about their experiences with, like, abuse or rape or stuff like that, and very serious topics, and express them safely. But like you mentioned before, and something that I also agree upon, that, you know, things with everything, with, like, from feminism to Christianity, some things just get taken way too far. And, you know, with that, things got taken way too far. Things got out of hand. Yeah. But, like, you're saying that, like, oh, and this is what I don't like about feminism. But not by including it, but, like, by saying that, like, oh, this is what I don't like about feminism is just the radicals. But, you know, while we're also trying to get above the radicals and try and still make progress and not have, like, people hate us, we also need people who can see past the radicals. And you seem like a person who can see past the radicals, who, like, even though it took, like, years of me, like, trying to break down the fact that they were radicals, and eventually it did happen, and we talked about how the people that you hated the most were the radicals, and that when I fully explained what feminism really was and what, as feminists, we are trying to achieve, you seem to agree on it.
But I still will...
But what we need is, like, more people who are willing to see past the radicals, who are willing to see feminism what it really is. And what you said on the femininity of men, at least from the feminism that I subscribe to, we kind of promote the end of toxic masculinity, which is that, like, just kind of admitting to the fact that you're human and not always trying to put up a front that you're this big macho man and you can handle everything and that you're indestructible and that, you know, you don't have feelings. Because even though a part of maybe your definition of masculinity may be that, you know, you're not very, like, forward with your feelings, or you don't, like, display them all the time, like, you know, if, like, you get hit in the face with a football, you don't just break down crying. But it's kind of, we're fighting against the idea that as a man, you can't express the fact that you do have feelings in those extreme cases. Like, for example, if a guy is the victim of sexual assault, he might feel that as a man, he can't speak out against it because it would hurt his masculinity, because it would be admitting that he was raped and that, you know, as a man, you're supposed to like sex, and, you know, or the idea that men can't be raped because, you know, they like sex. And
see, that idea, though, is not...
But that's toxic masculinity, is the idea that, you know, as a man, you have this front that you have to put up, and that, you know, sometimes you're human, and sometimes you have feelings, and, you know, I don't subscribe to the idea that people should break down crying anytime they want, but especially for men, there is the increased pressure of keeping it all bottled in, and that's not good for anyone. Keeping your feelings bottled in is just not a good way to live, because you just keep everything inside of you, and then nothing gets out, and you're just kept with this weight of your own emotions and your own psyche, and just eats at you.
That's just a misunderstanding of masculinity, because masculinity isn't about bottling up the emotions. Masculinity is about acting rationally on those emotions that you have. So, like, in the instance that a man was raped, and that happens, actually, that's pretty common, actually. Like, of course, it happens a lot more to women than men, but it still happens to men, and that's a big issue we gotta face. But the fact that I was raped and that's going to hurt my masculinity, that's not a view that a man would have. That's a view that an adolescent would have. And that's really a difference. Like, if you look at society today with men are not really men anymore. They're more like boys. There's a big difference there. Look at especially a lot of urban cities. Like, men don't know how to produce things. Men don't know how to work independently with themselves. Men don't act gentlemanly. Men don't know how to be independent. And because of that, they're still boys. And because they're still boys, they're going to act emotionally like boys. And that's what happens. So we need to address manliness in the way it is. You have to, like, we're not about bottling up those emotions, as we said. Like, it's acting differently. So, like, no, don't be the little bitch and cry all the time. Do something about it. So, yeah, like, you were raped, but let's do something about that then. Let's go find that motherfucker. All right? That's a difference. That's a huge difference. Or you were hit in the face. All right, let's go deal with that. Either A, get better. Let's practice more so we get better so we don't get hit in the face. Or if that person that threw the ball is playing dirty, let's fuck them up too. It's a little more rational that way. And the thing with femininity that I feel that's been put on, especially in schools, right, is like, let's look at, we got rid of dodgeball because some soccer moms didn't want their poor son getting hurt. We got rid of rope climbing because they didn't want someone getting hurt. We got rid of, like, poetry or writing that involved warfare, battlefield stuff, or things like that because, it's gonna trigger more violence, which is totally untrue. That kind of logic saying exposing a child to reading that has conflict in it is going to lead them to violence. It's like saying video games lead to violence. Totally doesn't work that way. It's not true at all, and studies have shown that. And especially look at studies, boys at a young age do like things with action in them. They do like things where something goes on. They'll tend to, if they write about something, they'll tend to write about something with action going on. Whereas women, of course, will, like, from these studies, and I'll actually look up these studies and find them tonight and get them posted, they'll show that, you know, maybe they'll focus more on emotion. Maybe they'll focus more on the interaction between people or, like, something or other detailed things. You look at drawings from young boys and young girls, elementary or primary school level girls and boys. Girls will have very, very, very detailed drawing of something. Maybe like a dress, flowers, things like that, using a lot of vivid colors. Boys won't use as many colors, but they'll draw an action. So a person throwing a basketball, an alien abducting a cow, there's an action going on. See the difference that I'm talking about here?
Yes, I do see the difference.
And
one thing that I want to... Am I interrupting?
No, go.
One of the things that I want to point out is the fact that what I was saying before was about toxic masculinity, which I think of. When I think of toxic masculinity, I think of the 50s, where it was just a lot of, like, rage within people, especially when it comes to, like, domestic abuse and stuff like that. And it was very much the height of, like, men being men and the caregivers, not the caregivers, my apologies, the breadwinners and stuff like that. Point I also want to make, I don't know that feminism has directly, like, conflicted with what you're saying, which is kind of what the topic of this is, but I will let you continue because what you're saying is very interesting.
Yeah.
But what I want to say is that I don't think feminism has directly contributed to what you're saying.
Now, I made this point, I think, earlier in another podcast about it, or maybe we had a discussion about this.
One other podcast.
One other podcast. Or I think maybe it was in a discussion. I don't want to fuck it up. But what feminists really try to go for is very important, is that they're going for equality between the two genders, right? But when you teach that way, when you raise that way, when you're not embracing that thing, so when women aren't taught to embrace certain aspects of femininity, when men aren't taught to embrace masculinity, it gets so weird and things get really fucked up. You need that basis before you can go into other things. Okay. You need that basis of masculinity, you need that basis of femininity.
What I have to say to that is that there are some, there are some girls who will be tomboys.
Yeah.
And there are some boys who may be a little more sensitive. Not men, just boys.
Yeah.
And I think the point I'm trying to get across is that what feminism is trying to say when we're saying, like, take back toxic masculinity, is saying that, it's trying to say that it's not the end of the world if you're not the manly man. If you're a boy and you're a little bit more sensitive than everyone else, and that's just who you are by nature, because some people are more sensitive than others, and it's not always a sex thing or a gender thing. Some people just, have more emotion in them, and that's just hormones and your own brain chemistry. And what we're trying to say is that, that it's okay it's okay if you're not like everyone else, and it's not to say that you should just, like, say, like, you have to be incredibly sensitive. It's just that if you aren't as tough as everyone else is, that it's not a bad thing.
Yeah,
and to embrace who they are as a person.
Here's what the real issue is that when I look at it and I look at the way things are taught in schools, when I look at social requirements for men, that like a lot of things are very, let's keep it gender neutral as possible, and that leads to more gender inequality. That leads to more inequality between the sexes. Whereas if you teach a certain way, if you teach boys only like really feminine poetry, they're not going to be really that into it. Or maybe there's one odd person, but like they're not really going to be that into it. Whereas if you teach a little bit more towards that, they'll get a little more interested. So you got to be able to embrace that. I mean, here's my issue is that feminism is all about we can do everything a man can. But that shouldn't be the point. I think what the point should be is we can do everything a man can't. And it should be vice versa like that.
I don't fully agree with what you're saying.
You have to embrace the differences between the two sexes.
Yes, I understand the point that you're trying to make, but I don't fully agree with it, which I think is a good thing.
But what don't you fully agree with? Because maybe I can address that. Because maybe I got you a little confused.
Well, no, I'm not confused. Okay. I'm just saying that, we can't be polar opposites. You can't say that, like, oh, because you do this, I can't do this.
Not in that...
It's just saying that we can embrace our differences, but we, should try and be an equal footing.
There are some things that men and women are both equally as good at. Their minds, of course, our minds work differently, but our minds can also accomplish pretty similar things. But when you go into maybe physical aspects, it's a little different. Like, of course, men physiologically and biologically are stronger than women.
Well, they're able to
build muscle,
more muscle because they have more testosterone than women.
A woman can train and like get stronger to try to do that and like surpass most men, and some people have, right? There's a lot of people now. There's a huge movement in CrossFit and strength training and things like that, and like, of course, good on you for doing that. But like, should a basic requirement of a strong, independent woman be you have to go to the gym, get super jacked, and be better than a person? No. You should be able to embrace maybe the advantages as a woman that you have against men, and men should be able to embrace the advantages they have some over women. As long as they're not abusing the other party, then we're good. So it shouldn't be about, let's try to do all the things that men do. It should be more, all right, let's try to do something that we're really good at and go with it. Get really, 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 really good at it and surpass them. Because when both sides are really focused on themselves and really doing a good job in their fields, then everyone benefits. Now, when I say this, I'm not saying all women should be just sitting there homemakers and be mothers because they're really good at that. No, I'm not saying that. Some fields, women are better at. In some industries would be a better example. Some women are better at working at than men. And men, they work better at other industries too. Like, take construction. Usually, most construction sites you're going to see mostly men. It's a difference. So you should be able to embrace that rather than like fighting over petty things.
Again, I get what you're saying, and while this was a little more clear, I think that while you're saying a part of what you think it is, that's definitely not everything that feminism is about. It's about trying, so it's about getting equality with men, but it's also there's also a part of feminism which is like also loving who you are as a person. Mm-hmm. And loving yourself as a person makes it so that you're able to achieve what you want, which is what...
See, that's a focus that should be more of a focus for feminism, because when you are self-confident and you have a good self-esteem, like, there's not much that's going to stop you in certain things.
A large part of feminism is you know, breaking down the social barriers that have built up by society, which is saying that women should be in a certain place, and saying that, you know, while you're saying that some women may be better in some fields, there are some women who are more inclined to math or engineering, and it's saying that I don't have to fit into those roles, and I'm comfortable enough with who I am to do what I want and to go for what I want.
Yeah, but again, the point I'm trying to make is the real goal of, like, for a while, especially what I've been hearing with feminism, is like, let's get more women into STEM, let's get more women into this. Oh, there's a big barrier holding us back. I'm like, there's no barrier, just change your major. That's an individual choice. But in order to make that individual choice, you need to have the self-esteem to do it. So that's the thing that you should be focusing on, because none of these are going to change. None of these statistics are going to change where women go to, what they study, what field they want to go into, whether they decide to be a homemaker or a worker or an employer. That's not going to change unless you have self-esteem. That should be the main focus, not, oh, let's do everything men do and, like, beat them back and, like, revolution, liberation.
Destroy men. That's basically what it is. It's all an undercover ploy so we can just destroy you.
I will take you down. I'm here warning you. You can't choke me. You can't kill me, Patty. Why?
Do you want to? Do you want
Why?
me to?
Because I'm a lifeguard. And that concludes this discussion. You can get more of it from the front. Look. Oh, I'm Donald